My name is Kate Blevins, and I'm 32. I learned to measure time not by clocks, but by summers on a dock my grandfather and I rebuilt, by the yawning boards that baked under Vermont sun, and the stubborn screws that refused to turn until you coaxed them like a prayer. Grandpa taught me that. Wood listens if you do. He'd say it with a smile while handing me a drill. Too big for my hands, and a patience I wouldn't understand until much later. 6 months ago, he died. The will was read on a Wednesday that smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. The lawyer's office had that hush of carpets and secrets, the kind that swallows every throat clear like a confession. My mother, Janet, sat with her jaw set, a cracked pearl bracelet twisting around her wrist as if it were trying to get away. My sister Emily, 25 and camera ready, even when she cried, dabbed at her eyeliner with the corner of a tissue. I sat beside Ethan, my boyfriend, quiet, steady, the kind of man who could hold a room in place just by breathing evenly. His hand brushed mine under the table, and I realized I'd been crushing the will's envelope as if I could press a different outcome into the paper. The outcome? The Lakehouse. 10 acres. A 4-bedroom cabin. Private lake access. Valued around $850,000, but worth more than money to the only person who'd ever taught me that value and price, our cousins who don't always speak. To Emily, $50,000 in cash, and Grandpa's vintage watch collection, roughly $30,000. The rest to charities he loved, the ones with photos in his den of children, holding little wooden boats he'd carved on rainy afternoons. The lawyer unfolded a letter in Grandpa's neat block handwriting. For me, summers on job sites, the fishing lessons, the time he let me cut the first board and I shaved it wrong, so we started over at midnight. And he said, starting over isn't failure, it's honesty. He wrote he wanted the property with someone who understood its value beyond money. For Emily, pride in her artistic pursuits, a hope the money would help her build a career. By the time the lawyer finished, I was breathing like I'd been holding my head underwater all year and had just surfaced. Ethan squeezed my fingers once. Not a victory, a grounding. Mom started her speech before the silence had even filled the room. This is wrong, Janet said, pearl bracelet ringing against itself. Family wealth is family wealth. Your grandfather was old-fashioned. He played favorites, because Kate worked in his shadow. She didn't say because she's female, but she didn't have to. Her eyes did the work of 1,000 op-eds. I kept my voice level. Grandpa discussed this for years. I didn't ask for the house. He decided. Emily's tissue stilled. It's just lucky for you, isn't it? The house could solve so many of my problems. She blinked, calculating, then softened it. I'm happy for you, Kate, really. I just thought it would be shared. Shared. The word hung there with sticky hands. Back at my apartment, the Lakehouse keys were cool in my palm and heavy with 1,000 summers. Ethan made tea the way he does when he doesn't know which words matter yet. You don't have to justify anything, he said. You don't owe them a sale. I owe them kindness, I said, and boundaries. The second part scratched my throat on the way out. I offered what I could. Emily can visit any time. We'll cover flights. She can even have her wedding there someday. And I'll help with her loans, from my savings. I typed the message. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. From balance. From wanting to be decent and refusing to be eaten. Janet's reply came as a family group text titled Fairness for Emily. She pasted articles about inheritance inequality, quotes about sons hoarding and daughters starving. She changed the Lakehouse from noun to indictment. Ethan glanced at the screen. Do you want me to mute it? I'll mute me, I said, setting the phone face down. 3 weeks passed quietly enough to be suspicious. Then Emily called, a breathless, sparkling ring in her voice. Mark proposed, she said, laughter spilling over itself. I grinned. Despite everything, I did love my sister. I remembered the backyard shows she staged with cardboard sets and how she'd cast me as the tree. Because you're steady. That's amazing, I told her. Congratulations. And, yes, the Lakehouse for your wedding, if you want it. She squealed, rustic, elegant, early summer, I can see it. Twinkle lights over the dock, an arch on the lawn. It's perfect. Her gratitude felt real. For a minute, I believed in the soft landing. Fast forward to Sunday. Ethan and I drove up to the Lakehouse to patch the dock and walk through the checklist I'd made in Grandpa's old notebook. Gutters, steps, the temperamental porch light. The moment we turned into the gravel drive, my stomach fell through the car. 3 cars already there, Emily's, Mark's, and a van lettered Evergreen Wedding Planning in a script so airy it made promises it couldn't keep. Inside, strangers were measuring my walls. A woman with a laser measure and a confident smile said, "You must be Kate. We're thinking we pull down this interior wall to open the flow from ceremony to cocktail hour." "This is my house," I said, too calm, which is how I get right before I am not. Emily flitted over in a linen dress that said effortless in the way only effort can. "Kate, good, you're here. We're getting a head start for our family Lakehouse wedding." She didn't look at the wall as a wall. She looked at it as a problem she could solve with my money. The planner handed me a card. I never caught her name. I just caught the way she used transform, like a sacrament. I pulled Emily aside. "You don't have the right to make plans here without me. This isn't a venue. It's my home." She rolled her eyes. "We both know Mom's right. It should be ours. I'm just moving us along." She flipped her phone and showed me her post. "Can't wait to marry my best friend at our family's beautiful lake property. Lakehouse wedding. Family state. Blessed." It wasn't the caption, it was the possessive. "Everyone needs to leave," I said. My voice had splinters in it. Emily's face crumpled on cue. "You're ruining my engagement joy," she said, loud enough so the strangers could hear. "Controlling a house you didn't even pay for." Mark tried to fold peace over it. "Let's all breathe. We're family." Janet arrived within the hour. 40 minutes condensed into 30 if the dark lines in her forehead meant what I thought they did. She walked in as if she'd left her crown on the coat rack. She didn't look at Ethan at all. "What have you done to your sister?" she asked me. Not really a question. "What she's doing is illegal," I said. "Trespassing, planning renovations, claiming ownership." Janet's mouth went thin. "Your grandfather was declining when he wrote that will. You had access. You influenced him. Don't you dare pretend you didn't." "The estate attorney has the medical competency evaluation," I said. "Please leave." She turned on Ethan, finally looking. "And you," she said. "You found yourself a rich girl with a lake, didn't you?" How convenient. Her smile was a carving knife. "What does your ex-girlfriend think about your new life? The brunette with the marketing job? What was her name?" She glanced at Emily, satisfied. It was a smear, random but sticky, designed to make me feel cheap. Ethan didn't flinch. "We're done here," he said. "Now." The wedding planner vanished like ink in water. Mark looked embarrassed. Emily cried prettier. I opened the door and waited. One hand on the frame Grandpa had sanded smooth. "Leave," I said, and for once they did. But not before Emily posted a tearful video about how her sister was gatekeeping family property and destroying a dream. The video sprouted comments like mold. By nightfall, my phone was an alarm bell. I changed the locks. I installed cameras. On the porch, Ethan set a mug of coffee beside me and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, even though the air was warm. Across the lake, a loon cut the water in half. "Do you want to fight?" he asked, "or do you want to fix?" "I want to honor," I said. "Grandpa, and my own spine." Inside, in the storage bench, there was a box I'd never gotten around to opening. Grandpa's journals. 40 years of the same black notebook, labeled by month and patience. I placed a hand on the lid and didn't lift it yet. "Some doors you wait to open until you've earned the truth on the other side." "Tomorrow," I said, mostly to myself. "Tomorrow I'll read." For now I listened to the dock creak, wood listening back. The next morning, I woke to 73 missed notifications. Family group chat, Facebook tags, even a message from my old high school art teacher that read, "Kate, I hope this isn't true. You always seemed so kind." I didn't need to open the post to know what they said. Emily had spun the story overnight into a tragedy. Her tragedy. The headline photo was a still from her video. She looked small, mascara smudged just right, eyes glossy, as she sat on the dock steps. Caption: "When your sister steals your dream wedding venue and calls it hers, Grandpa's legacy was supposed to unite us, not divide us. #justice. #family betrayal. #Lakehouse gate." By the time I scrolled through the comments, the narrative had already taken shape. I was greedy. I had manipulated a dying man. I was jealous of Emily's happiness. The internet didn't even know me, but somehow it already hated me. Ethan found me at this kitchen counter, phone in hand. Don't feed it, he said softly, setting down 2 mugs of coffee. They'll twist anything you say. But he didn't need to tell me that twice. I was already too tired to defend myself to strangers. Instead, I typed one text to Emily. You crossed a line. Take down the video, please. Her reply came 2 minutes later. If you'd just share what's supposed to be ours, I wouldn't have to. I didn't answer. By evening, Janet's number flashed across my screen. I almost didn't pick up. Almost. Kate, she began without greeting. You've embarrassed this family. Everyone's talking about your behavior. Do you realize how cruel it looked, kicking your own sister out of the Lakehouse? I closed my eyes. She was trespassing, with contractors. They were planning to demolish walls. Because she thought it was her home, too. Janet's voice cracked, then hardened again. You've always been possessive. Even as a child, you hated sharing your toys. I laughed once. Short, ugly. A house isn't a toy, Mom. She ignored that. You can still fix this. Sell it. Split the money. Then maybe your grandfather's spirit will finally rest. His spirit is fine, I said. Yours isn't. The line went dead. For 3 weeks, the air around me thickened with silence that wasn't peace. Ethan's coworkers whispered that he'd married into money. My company's receptionist mentioned that someone had called pretending to verify my employment for a mortgage, using my name. Everywhere I went, it felt like someone had already decided what kind of person I was. When I drove back to the Lakehouse to reset the security system, I noticed new tire tracks curling through the gravel, fresh footprints in the mud by the porch. Someone had been here. The door still locked, but the window latch in the back room, Grandpa's old study, was unfastened. The air inside was colder, as if it remembered being invaded. Ethan stayed quiet while I checked the rooms. They'll come back, he said finally. You need cameras, real ones. By nightfall, we'd installed 2 motion sensors, a doorbell cam, and a deadbolt that clanked like a warning. When the porch light flicked on automatically, I caught my reflection in the window. Same eyes as Grandpa, same stubborn jaw, but there was something new now, a kind of stillness that wasn't calm, but conviction. I took the journals out from the storage bench and carried them to the table. The first one was dated 1984, the last 2021. Neat handwriting, sharp corners. A man who didn't waste paper or words. I started in the middle. July 12, 2011. Emily's birthday today. Sent card and check. No thank you call. Invited her to Lake for 4th of July. She said she had plans. Later saw photos of her at the beach house with friends. Kate, helped rebuild the dock today. Hard worker. Reminds me of her grandmother. I froze on that line. Grandpa had written my name like it was a secret worth saving. Page after page, it was the same. Emily asking for money, skipping visits, promising to come next time. Grandpa sending funds anyway, then thanking me for showing up. By the end of the notebook, I was crying in a way I hadn't since the funeral. Quiet, private, almost soundless. Ethan's hand found my shoulder. You needed to see that, he said. I didn't want to, I whispered. But yes, I did. 2 nights later, a letter arrived at my apartment. Crisp envelope, embossed logo from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside, formal request for mediation regarding the unfair distribution of the Blevins estate. Emily and Janet claimed Grandpa had been unduly influenced, that I'd monopolized access during his final years. It wasn't a lawsuit yet, but it was the opening act of one. Ethan read the document over my shoulder. You know what this means. Yeah, I said. They're not done. They're just warming up. 3 days later, Emily showed up at my construction office. Yes, my company, the one Grandpa helped me start. She brought Mark and a lawyer who looked like he billed by the breath. Emily looked exhausted, or maybe she'd practiced looking that way. Hair undone, no makeup, wrinkled clothes that whispered, "See, I'm the victim." The lawyer handed me a folder. Ms. Blevins, we'd like to resolve this amicably. Inside, a settlement demand. 50% of the Lakehouse value for $25,000. $100,000 for emotional distress. $50,000 for wedding venue changes. $80,000 to cover Emily's student loans. Total, $655,000. I blinked once, then twice, because my brain refused to process that number. Then I laughed, softly at first, then harder than I should have. Emily's lower lip trembled. You're enjoying this, she said. You love seeing me miserable. You mean accountable? I said. Yes, I do enjoy that. Mark stepped forward, jaw tight. Kate, this doesn't have to get ugly. It already is, I said. The lawyer cleared his throat. If we can't reach agreement, my clients will be forced to pursue litigation. Or, he glanced at Emily, seek support publicly. They left the folder on my desk and walked out. Ethan came in minutes later. What happened? I handed him the papers. They just tried to sell me my own inheritance. He read the total and whistled. They're bluffing. Maybe, I said, staring out the window at the crane yard. But even a bluff can ruin a reputation if you play it loud enough. That evening, Emily proved my point. A new post appeared online. My name is Emily Blevins, and I'm fighting for my grandfather's legacy. The GoFundMe headline read, Help me fight for fairness in my family inheritance. Goal, $50,000 for legal fees. Within 24 hours, she'd raised $7,000. The comments were vicious. Men always hoard property. Sisters deserve equality. Shame on you, Kate. I stared at the page, fingers trembling over the keyboard. Every part of me screamed to reply, to scream the truth. Ethan touched my wrist. Don't, he said quietly. But I already had. One comment. Just facts. The will was legal. Grandpa was evaluated for competency. Emily received $80,000 in cash and valuables. I offered her use of the Lakehouse and financial help. Please know the truth before you judge. It lasted less than an hour before she deleted it and blocked me. That night, while Ethan locked the door, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by journals and silence and rage that didn't know where to go. They want me to settle, I said finally. They're betting I'll cave just to make it stop. He poured 2 glasses of wine and slid one to me. So don't cave. Make it stop your way. I opened Grandpa's last notebook, the one labeled April, final summer. Last will appointment today. Lawyer asked about Emily. Told him she'll get cash, easier for her to use. The lake should go to Kate. She sees it as more than property value. I closed the journal and exhaled. I think I just found my way. Ethan nodded. Then let's start documenting. Everything. The printer hummed until midnight as I scanned screenshots, copied texts, and organized each post into a growing folder named Evidence. For the first time since Grandpa's funeral, I didn't feel helpless. I felt prepared. The next battle wouldn't be about property. It would be about truth. And truth, unlike a house, couldn't be stolen. 3 weeks of silence can feel like peace, or it can feel like the calm between lightning strikes. For me, it was the second. The first hint of thunder came on a Thursday morning. Ethan and I were halfway through breakfast when his phone buzzed. He frowned, scrolling. Kate, did you see this? A regional blog had posted an article. Local artist fights for fairness after sister inherits family Lakehouse, worth nearly $1 million. There was a smiling photo of Emily, holding one of Grandpa's old watches. The article never mentioned that she'd already received the entire collection. They quoted her tearfully. I just want what's right. My grandfather promised it would be a family place. No mention of the journals. No mention of the will video. No mention of reality. That's when I realized she wasn't just fighting in court. She was fighting for narrative control. And in a world built on sympathy clicks, she was winning. By that weekend, things spiraled. Someone left 1-star reviews on my company's Google page. Elder abuser. She manipulated her dying grandfather for property. Don't trust her. She steals from family. One review even included my address. Ethan's hospital wasn't spared either. Someone printed copies of Emily's GoFundMe and pinned them on the break room board with the note, Is this your coworker's fiancé? When he came home that night, his hands were shaking, not from anger, but from exhaustion. I almost lost my temper today, he said. One of the nurses asked if I was proud of marrying into stolen money. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You shouldn't have to defend me. Then don't make me watch you fight alone, he said quietly. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too busy staring at my phone where my mother had just posted a new essay on Facebook. We must talk about inheritance inequality, how old patriarchal systems pit siblings against each other. She ended with a hashtag Justice for Emily. And then the photo. A picture of her and Emily, arms around each other, at the lake 10 years ago. Captioned, Before greed tore us apart. The next morning, my inbox exploded with messages. Friends, distant relatives, strangers telling me to do the right thing. But the one message that broke me came from my dad. He and my mother had divorced 10 years ago, and he'd moved to Oregon. We spoke occasionally, polite and distant. His text read, I'm proud of you for standing your ground. Grandpa would be too. Don't let them rewrite the truth. I cried so hard I could barely breathe, because it felt like, for once, someone saw me. Not the villain Emily had painted online, but the granddaughter Grandpa had trusted. I decided then I wouldn't just defend myself, I'd document everything. I called my lawyer, a patient woman named Lydia Carter, who'd handled Grandpa's estate. I told her everything, the GoFundMe, the posts, the defamation. She listened, then said, "We can issue a cease and desist. But before we do, gather evidence, screenshots, dates, timestamps, every post, every lie." So that's what Ethan and I did. We spent hours combing through the wreckage of Emily's campaign, every caption about equal rights, every photo implying I'd stolen from her, every anonymous comment that clearly came from our mother. I built folders named social, legal, and personal because Grandpa had taught me that order was a kind of armor. And then I opened his journals again. The smell of old ink and cedar hit me. Grandpa had written daily, even when his hands started to shake. One entry, dated just 2 months before he passed, made my throat close. Spoke with Janet today. She's still upset that Emily gets cash, not property. I told her a home is earned, not gifted. Kate will care for this place. She knows what it costs to maintain it. Not just money, but effort. Emily sees comfort, not labor. I don't blame her. Some people are dreamers, but dreamers shouldn't hold the deeds. He'd seen everything, even the storm that was coming. I took photos of those pages and added them to the folder. The silence broke again 2 days later, with a letter from Emily's lawyer. Formal tone, polite wording, venom hidden under ink. They accused me of emotional manipulation, of exploiting proximity to an elderly man, of hoarding assets that should have been equally distributed. At the bottom, we request a public statement acknowledging partial responsibility and an offer of compensation. I stared at it for a full minute before I started laughing, the kind of laugh that's too sharp to be humor. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That bad? They want me to issue a statement saying I might have influenced Grandpa, I said, in exchange for peace. He exhaled slowly. You're not giving them anything. No, I said, my voice steady now. I'm giving them the truth, publicly. The next week, I uploaded everything to a secure drive. Scans of the will, the doctor's competency report, Grandpa's letter explaining his decisions, photos of his journals, screenshots of Emily's posts and the GoFundMe lies. And then I bought a domain name, The Truth About, the Blevins Estate. I didn't publish it yet, not yet. First, I sent Lydia's drafted cease and desist to both Emily and my mother, giving them 72 hours to take everything down. They didn't respond directly. Instead, Emily went live on Instagram. She sat in her apartment, surrounded by tissues, wearing the same cardigan she'd worn during her Lakehouse tragedy video. Her voice quivered perfectly. I just got a letter from a lawyer, my own sister's lawyer. She's trying to silence me with threats. I guess when you have money, you can afford to bully your family. Her followers flooded the comments with hearts and angry emojis. #StandWithEmily started trending locally. She ended the video with one line that twisted something inside me. I'm just fighting for the dream Grandpa promised us both. By the time she logged off, I'd already made my decision. They called our bluff, I told Ethan, so we show them it wasn't one. He nodded. Then let's go live too, but with proof. The next morning, the website went public. It was clean, simple, factual, no drama, just documents. The full will, notarized and dated. The medical evaluation signed by Grandpa's doctor. The letter he wrote to me about why he chose the Lakehouse. Screenshots of Emily's own messages admitting she barely visited him. And one final piece, text logs recovered from Discovery. One from Emily to her best friend. Once Kate cracks, I'm buying a condo in Back Bay. Mom says if we keep pressure, she'll pay us off just to shut us up. The internet moved fast after that. Her GoFundMe was flagged and suspended within hours. By the next day, the comments on her posts had flipped. Wait, did you see the receipts? Girl, this is embarrassing. Maybe you're the greedy one. Emily deleted her account by midnight. For the first time in months, my phone was silent. But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Because Janet never stayed quiet for long. And sure enough, a week later, an email arrived. From a new attorney. Subject line, formal filing, contest of will, Blevins Estate. It was happening. The storm Grandpa had seen in his journal had finally broken. And I was done running from it. When I walked into the courthouse that morning, it felt like stepping into a movie I hadn't agreed to star in. The marble floors echoed, and every sound, heels, whispers, camera clicks, seemed to underline that this wasn't just a family fight anymore. It was public spectacle. The case was officially titled, Janet and Emily Blevins versus Kate Blevins. Contest of Will, alleging undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. My own mother and sister were listed as plaintiffs. I sat beside Lydia, my lawyer, and tried to breathe through the tremor in my hands. Ethan was right behind me, calm as ever, his steady presence like an anchor through a hurricane. When the judge entered, the air itself straightened. Emily was already crying before testimony even began. Not the ugly kind, no, the delicate, photogenic tears of someone who knew exactly where every camera was. Her lawyer guided her to the stand first. "Miss Blevins," he began softly, "can you describe your relationship with your grandfather?" She nodded, voice trembling. "He was everything. He used to call me his little artist. We spent summers painting together by the lake. I wanted to shout, 'You visited twice in 10 years,' but I didn't. I just watched her spin those half-memories into a tapestry of innocence." Her lawyer guided her through the narrative, how she'd been shocked to find herself excluded, how I'd isolated Grandpa during his final years, how I controlled access to his finances. The performance was flawless. Even the judge frowned sympathetically. Then came Mom, Janet Blevins, composed and deliberate. Her words were sharp, not weepy. "My father loved both my daughters," she said, "but Kate took advantage of his trust. She visited him constantly, yes, but always alone. She managed his prescriptions, his schedule, his mail. Over time, she made herself indispensable. That kind of control over an elderly man's life, well, influence, becomes inevitable." She didn't look at me once. When she stepped down, I realized something awful. She believed it, or at least she'd repeated the lie so often it had fossilized into her version of truth. Then Lydia stood, calm, methodical, surgical. "Defense calls Dr. Alan McCreary," she said. Grandpa's physician of 15 years walked in, white-haired but sharp-eyed. "Doctor," Lydia began, "was Mr. Blevins ever diagnosed with cognitive decline?" "Never," he replied. "His memory was exceptional for his age." "And were you aware of any pressure from Ms. Kate Blevins regarding his will?" He smiled faintly. The only pressure she applied was reminding him to take his blood pressure meds. A ripple of laughter passed through the courtroom. Emily's lawyer glared. Next came Grandpa's accountant, who testified about the years of consistent estate planning, the documentation, the signatures, all legally sound. And then Lydia reached into her briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. "Your Honor," she said, "with permission, the defense would like to submit video evidence recorded by the decedent 2 months before his death." The lights dimmed slightly as the clerk set up the playback. And there he was, Grandpa, sitting on the porch swing of the Lakehouse, sunlight catching the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, his voice steady and strong. "I'm leaving the Lakehouse to Kate because she understands what this place means. She's worked for it, cared for it, and treated it as more than a building. Emily will receive cash. She'll use it well in her own way. I love them both, but a home like this requires commitment, and Kate's shown that." The courtroom went silent. Even Emily stopped crying. I didn't look at my mother. I couldn't. The rest of the trial felt like a slow collapse of everything they'd built against me. Lydia presented medical reports, witness affidavits, journal entries, and the timeline of Emily's GoFundMe campaign, proving her narrative was profit-driven, not grief-driven. Then came the text messages, the ones I'd already published online. The judge read them himself. "Once Kate cracks, I am buying a condo in Back Bay. Mom says if we keep the pressure up, she'll pay us off." When he finished, he set the pages down slowly. The only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioner. He turned to Emily's lawyer. "Do you wish to proceed?" The lawyer whispered something to Emily, who shook her head, trembling. Janet's jaw locked, her hands white-knuckled on the table. After a long pause, the judge sighed. "I've reviewed the documentation and the testimony," he said. "The will stands as written. There is no credible evidence of undue influence or mental incapacity. This case appears to have been filed out of spite, not justice." Then, the part I'll never forget. "I hereby order the plaintiffs to pay the defendant's legal fees for what is clearly a frivolous and malicious lawsuit." My breath left me in one rush. Lydia squeezed my arm. Ethan leaned forward, whispering, "You did it." But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like mourning. Outside, the reporters were waiting. Cameras, microphones, questions like shrapnel. "Kate, any comment on your sister's emotional testimony? Do you plan to sell the Lakehouse now that you've won? Was your grandfather's will sexist in any way?" I just said, "My grandfather made his wishes clear. I honored them. Then I walked past the noise, hand in hand with Ethan, straight to the parking lot. When the doors of the car shut, the silence felt too big. "She's not done," I said quietly. "Mom will spin this again." "She can try," Ethan replied, "but the truth is louder now." 2 days later, Emily posted a single Instagram story. "Sometimes you learn who people really are when money's involved, moving on and healing from toxicity." Classic Emily, turning shame into performance art. Mom sent one final email that same night. "You may have won legally, but you've lost your family. I hope that house was worth it." I didn't reply. Some words aren't bridges, they're exits. The following week, I received an unexpected call. Mark, Emily's ex-fiancé. "Hey, Kate," he said awkwardly. "Can we talk? Privately." We met at a small cafe near the courthouse. He looked thinner, older, the way people look after realizing the person they loved was a stranger. "I ended the engagement," he said. "I couldn't marry someone who lies that easily. She practiced her crying, before the hearing." I said nothing. He sighed. "I thought I knew her. I really did. But she spent every cent Grandpa left her. The watches, the cash. It's all gone. Designer clothes, a trip to Bali, some kind of healing retreat. She kept saying once she got your Lakehouse money, we'd start fresh." He stirred his coffee, then added softly, "I think she's incapable of seeing herself as wrong." When he left, he said something I didn't expect. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry for believing her." And then he was gone. A week later, a letter arrived forwarded from Emily's old address. It was from a debt collector. Apparently, she'd listed me as a reference on a loan application, claiming I was her business partner. My lawyer handled it. But still, when I read those words, I realized something chilling. Some people don't stop until there's nothing left to take. When the Lakehouse renovations were finally complete, Ethan and I drove up together. The new kitchen gleamed softly under warm lights. The dock, rebuilt plank by plank, looked just like it had when Grandpa and I first finished it all those years ago. As we stood on the porch, Ethan took my hand and whispered, "You're shaking." I smiled faintly. It's relief, and maybe grief. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. Both can live in the same heart. Inside, the fire crackled, and for the first time since the will reading, the place didn't feel haunted by tension. It felt like home again. Then Ethan handed me a small box. Inside was a sonogram photo. I froze, breath catching. "Is this?" He nodded, eyes wet. "We're having a baby, Kate." I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth, laughed, then cried, then whispered, "We'll name him Thomas." He smiled. "After Grandpa?" "Yes," I said. "After the man who taught me how to build something that lasts." Out on the water, the moon's reflection shimmered. The Lakehouse had never been quieter, but for the first time, that silence felt like peace, not loss. The months that followed the trial didn't feel like victory. They felt like aftershocks. People stopped calling. The family group chat died in silence. I didn't delete it. I wanted to see the void they left behind. Mom and Emily moved in together. That's what distant relatives whispered anyway. I wouldn't have known. Every bridge between us was burned to ash. The last time I saw them was in the courtroom hallway, where Mom walked right past me as if I were invisible. But grief has a way of circling back in quieter moments. Sometimes I'd stand on the porch, looking at the lake and wondering how we had gotten here, how love could curdle into entitlement, and how family could weaponize sentiment. Ethan said I was too kind to keep asking those questions, but the truth was I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. And then I realized that was the difference between us. I wanted closure. They wanted control. One evening, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a book titled Inheritance and Fairness in Modern Families. No note, but the first page was dog-eared, underlined. Fairness is not equality. It is the alignment of value with contribution. I didn't need a signature to know who had sent it. It was the closest thing to an apology Mom would ever give. I didn't reply. The Lakehouse became our sanctuary. Ethan finished rebuilding the dock the week before winter. We painted the nursery together, a soft sage green. We laughed about how Grandpa would have scolded us for using cheap brushes, then probably fixed them himself anyway. Some weekends, Dad flew in from Oregon. He'd sit on the porch swing with me, coffee in hand, watching the fog lift off the water. "You know," he said one morning, "your grandpa would have been proud, not for winning the case, but for keeping your integrity when everyone else dropped theirs." I smiled faintly. "I didn't feel strong most days." He chuckled. "Real strength never does." 2 months later, I gave birth to a baby boy. We named him Thomas Ethan Blevins. When I held him for the first time, tiny and fierce in his own way, I whispered, You'll never have to fight for what love owes you. You'll just have it. Ethan laughed softly, tears in his eyes. That sounds like a promise. It is, I said. We brought Thomas home to the Lakehouse on a windy afternoon. The house had that smell of old wood and possibility again. In the nursery, I hung a framed photo, Grandpa and me, standing on the dock, sawdust in our hair. Weeks later, when I went down to the basement to store baby clothes, I found one last of Grandpa's journals wedged behind a beam. This one was labeled simply, Legacy. Inside, only one entry. Family isn't the blood that claims you. It's the hands that build with you. When I leave, I hope Kate remembers. Kindness isn't weakness, but it must have walls. I traced the words with my thumb until the ink smudged. Outside, the wind rattled the dock, same as it had 20 years ago. The boards creaked in rhythm with the lake, alive, forgiving. I carried the journal upstairs and placed it on the mantel. Months turned into a year. Emily never reached out. I heard through a cousin that she was working on a memoir about inheritance trauma and healing from toxic family. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom reportedly managed her finances until the day Emily took out another personal loan, using my name again. That was the last straw. My lawyer issued a permanent no-contact order. I didn't even feel anger anymore, just relief. Because I had finally learned the lesson Grandpa had been trying to teach me since I was 15. Some things aren't worth rebuilding. That spring, the snow melted into silver ribbons across the lake. Ethan and I took Thomas out to the dock for the first time. The wood was warm underfoot, and the sun caught the water just right. Someday, I said, I'll teach him to fish the way Grandpa taught me. Ethan grinned. And maybe how to use a drill that's too big for his hands. I laughed through tears. Exactly that. We stood there, the three of us, in the quiet heartbeat of the Lakehouse. And I realized something simple, almost sacred. I hadn't just kept Grandpa's promise. I had built on it. This house wasn't my inheritance. It was my instruction manual. For work, for love, for boundaries, for peace. As the sun dipped low, I whispered into the breeze, "Thank you, Grandpa. The house is safe. Your lessons are safe, and I am too." The dock creaked softly in reply. Somewhere beyond the waterline, I imagined his voice saying what he always did whenever we packed up our tools. "Good work, kid, that'll hold."